Chapter 31, Swordsman and Battle. After having breakfast and successfully passing the time, Luke returned to the street and started wandering alone. Following the explanation of why Servaresta could be used, the conversation between him and Dirk basically ended. Neither party intended to exchange too many pleasantries. Since the goal had been achieved, it was natural for them to go their separate ways. But after Luke left, both parties actually breathed a sigh of relief. Lux was relieved because negotiating with the King of Evil normally while suppressing his fighting spirit was very tiring. Scheme and intrigues were really not suitable for him. If possible, cutting his enemies off with a sword would be easier. However, his inevitable battle with Orphelia in this year's Lindworm is now a tacit understanding between Luke and Dirk. Dirk hopes to use Orphelia to test how strong Luke is, seizing the initiative in the cooperation between the two parties. Luke hopes that the difficulty of the main mission can be slightly higher. The more difficult the mission, the higher the evaluation after completion. In the current Asterisk City, it is difficult to find another person who can not only participate in the Lindworm Festa, but also has legitimate B-level strength. If Dirk's test of Luke ends prematurely due to some minor disagreement, it may affect Orphelia's participation in Lindworm. For Luke, that would be more of a loss than a gain. To be honest, as a swordsman, his fighting spirit has been suppressed for too long. If it weren't for Fan Xinglu and Wu Xiaowei, who had been sparring with him during the past 2 years, he would have been unable to resist running out to cause trouble. Even so, he's almost at the limit of his patience, and sparring with Fan Xinglu and Wu Xiaowei is still more of a discussion stage. It was impossible for Wu Xiaowei and Luke to make a killing blow during a sparring match, while Fan Xinglu was even more unlikely to use her full strength because of the gap in level. This resulted in Luke's inner fighting spirit and passion having nowhere to vent. He is a swordsman, and as a swordsman, fighting is an inevitable fate, and it is also a shortcut for him to become stronger quickly. This was something his mentor had warned him about when he first chose this career. Each swordsman's path to battle may be different. Some people become stronger through endless battles, some people become stronger by constantly surpassing themselves, and some people become stronger by challenging the strong. The only thing that remains unchanged is that the path of a swordsman will be accompanied by countless battles. After all, a sword is a murder weapon after all. What Luke chose was to fight against the strong. In fact, if possible, Fan Xinglu would be the best choice. But now, Fan Xinglu and Luke have a master-student relationship. Well, actually, this thing is nothing in the eyes of the two of them. The main reason is that Luke is not strong enough now to satisfy Fan Xinglu. After following Fan Xinglu for the past 2 years, Luke can basically confirm that Fan Xinglu is definitely an A-level figure. With Luke's current strength, if it was not coaching or sparring, but a real battle, it would not be a challenge, but an act of suicide. Prana has a crushing advantage when dealing with people who are weaker than you. The biggest advantage of this kind of energy is defense. Fan Xinglu has at least A-level Prana reserves, which means that if he doesn't reach a level on the offensive end, he won't be able to break through her defense at all. How can one fight without breaking through the opponent's defense? Unless one possesses a mysterious power that is better than Prana, facing the power of Prana is tantamount to cutting off the possibility of anyone leapfrogging the challenge. Perhaps, the seemingly absurd tactic of breaking the school emblem for victory in Asterisk City was set up out of similar considerations. Unlike Luke's reason for sighing, Dirk's reason was simply pressure. Maybe Luke himself didn't notice that when he realized that Orphelia was outside, his whole aura began to rise. By the time Luke and Dirk ended their conversation, there was basically no one around the coffee shop except them. The confrontation between the two monsters made the area full of depression. Fortunately, they didn't stay for long, otherwise, the police force from Asterisk City would have come to surround this place in a while. The accumulation of fighting spirit is actually a good thing for Luke. It can not only temper his character but also make his sword intent sharper. Hey! It's you, right? Out here in broad daylight on the street, unabashedly exuding battle intent. Just as Luke was idling, preparing to continue his stroll, a pleasant voice came from the side. Huh, did the security team come here so quickly? Luke was a bit surprised. In his opinion, the police force should not arrive so quickly. He turned around and saw a girl with long light brown hair. The girl seemed to have heard his mumble and responded with a soft, gentle laugh. In that laughter, a magical quality seemed to be woven, so exquisite and ethereal. This could be considered the most melodious sound Luke had ever heard until now. The owner of this beautiful voice was the brown-haired girl in front of him. She took 2 steps forward and explained to Luke, "I am not from the police force." With this perfect voice, beautiful face, and her long light brown hair, Luke knew who the person in front of him was after feeling the large amount of prana reserve flowing inside her body. After confirming that the other party was really not a member of the police force, Luke lowered his guard. "So, am I getting hit on here, lovely miss?" Looking at the disguised diva in front of him, Luke was happy to chat with her. But in his heart, he was actually quite surprised. He was going to attend the other party's concert in the afternoon, but he didn't expect to meet her here by chance. In Sylvia's eyes, a hint of surprise flashed as she noticed that almost simultaneously with her words, Luke became certain that she was not a member of the security team. Did he genuinely believe her words? Or was it that her disguise had been exposed? Indeed, it's a bit of a flirt. Would this gentleman be willing to accompany a young lady for a little stroll down the street? Upon hearing Luke's words, Sylvie didn't respond positively. As a world-class singer, countless people had begged just to exchange a few words with her. Yet now, she unexpectedly found herself being thought of as actively making a move. If her fans knew about this, it would be a huge scandal. However, she was indeed somewhat curious about this extreme swordsman. It should be said that no one in Asterisk City would not be curious about this mysterious, extreme swordsman. Hearing that the other party also plans to participate in this year's Lindworm Festa, considering it as an opportunity to gather information, chatting with him wouldn't be a bad idea. Chapter 32, Sylvia Lineheim. "I see, that astonishing momentum just now was because you met that Bereshkigel," Sylvia said, a bit surprised. Attracted by their momentum, she came here with the idea that she might discover something amazing. Sylvia still felt a little regretful that she could not rush over in time and therefore missed such a good opportunity to effectively evaluate the strength of her 2 competitors. These 2 were her opponents in Lindworm Festa this year, and they were both the kind that she had no confidence in winning. "It would have been nice if I had been there at that time. It would have been a pity to have missed the collision between Jilong 7's number 1 and Rewolf Black's number 1. After disguising, Sylvia was not as dazzling as she was on stage but instead was filled with a simple and serene feeling. However, Luke admitted that no matter which kind of Sylvia she was very beautiful. Although Sylvia, after disguising, is not so eye-catching, if you calm down and slowly appreciate her beauty, there is a feeling that you will never get tired of it. Is there something on my face? Perhaps because Luke's eyes were too direct, Sylvia felt a bit shy when he kept staring at her. "It's nothing. I was just wondering, how did you recognize me? Logically speaking, I shouldn't have such high popularity in Asterisk City." Just now, when the 2 were introducing themselves to each other, Sylvia was the first to say Luke's name. At the same time, she also reported the nickname Sylvie instead of her full name. Luke could actually guess that Sylvia would know him, mostly because of her being the student council president of Queenvale Girls Academy. However, since Sylvia was not going to bring this up, Luke was happy to act with her. About this, why do you ask? Luke, you are also a famous person. Suddenly questioned by Luke like this, Sylvia, who was not mentally prepared, appeared a bit flustered for a moment. But she quickly thought of an excuse, tweaked it a little, showed that she was a bit embarrassed, and then replied, "Well, in fact, I am your fan and have been following your news for a long time. Maybe you don't know about it, but Extreme Swordsman is quite popular in the city." After saying this, Sylvia's heart began to pound. Maybe because she was an idol, she subconsciously used the identity of a fan when making excuses. She is obviously a top idol, but now she tells others that she is his long-term fan. This is the first time she has experienced this contrasting feeling. And telling others, "I've been paying attention to you," or something like that. How did she manage to say something that sounded like a confession just now? The excuse Sylvia made was not just a random one. Luke's current popularity in the city is indeed among the top. Maybe it's not as good as Sylvia and Ophelia, but the gap is not much. Especially his plan to participate in this year's Lindworm has made him a central figure in urban gossip recently. At this moment, Luke, entirely oblivious to Sylvia's inner thoughts, couldn't help but marvel at her acting prowess. In Luke's perception, Sylvia portrayed the demeanor of an ardent fan meeting her idol with such vividness that even the blush on her cheeks exuded a charming hint of shyness. Truly deserving of being the world's foremost idol, her acting skills alone are beyond the reach of ordinary individuals. Since the other party wants to act, of course, Luke must cooperate with her. So he very skillfully put his arms around Sylvia, letting the girl lean into his arms. At this moment, the two of them evolved from friends shopping side by side to a couple walking the streets, embracing each other. Sylvia was stunned. She just leaned into Luke's arms stupidly and continued walking along the street under his embrace. This wasn't Sylvia's acquiescence to Luke hugging her, but her brain was completely shut down. As a top-notch diva and the world's most famous idol, the student council president of Queen Vale Girls Academy and the #1 student there. With countless titles attached to her, she is still a strong person with considerable strength, and she is also a Striga with the famous, almost omnipotent, ability. This was the first time in her life that someone had treated her so frivolously. She wanted to scream, to shyly jump out of Luke's arms, and then use her abilities to teach this bastard a lesson. But she also clearly realized that she was now acting, and her long-term professional habits subconsciously stopped her actions. The instinct that has been engraved in her body allows her to subconsciously play her role perfectly when she is acting. So there she was, stupidly being held in Luke's arms without any sign of resistance. Even in the depths of her heart, a strange emotion emerged, as if secretly. Wow, what is she even thinking? This is too exciting. Oh, this is so shameless. At this moment, Sylvia's mind was completely muddled, unable to think straight. In this state, she silently leaned on Luke's embrace, letting him lead the two of them in the direction they were going. This is too dedicated. Luke looked at Sylvia in his arms, who was clearly on the verge of embarrassment and fainting, yet she still lay, resolutely, in his embrace. Little did he know, the girl at this moment was simply unable to think, which inadvertently granted Luke a significant benefit. To be able to hold in his arms the world's #1 idol, Sylvia Lindheim, is the dream of many. Luke, finding himself in such a fortunate situation, certainly wouldn't let this opportunity slip away. After all, no matter how one looks at it, there's no way he could come out on the losing end. Just as Sylvia hadn't fully grasped the situation, Luke led her into a small alley. Thunk! Luke pressed Sylvia against the wall, his face slowly approaching hers. He teasingly whispered, "What's the matter?" Excited to the point of speechlessness by being embraced by your idol. At this moment, Sylvia was starting to regain her composure, only to realize that the current situation was somewhat precarious. No, wait, just wait a moment. It's not like this. As the distance between Luke and herself closed, Sylvia suddenly became flustered. Perhaps due to her earlier overthinking, her heart was now pounding rapidly, and she felt a bit weak all over. Under the pressure of Luke's imposing presence, she found herself unable to muster the thought of resistance for a moment. Despite being a Striga with formidable strength, she appeared lost and helpless, much like a young girl. In the midst of Sylvia's confusion, mixed with a hint of anticipation, Luke took aim at her lips and deeply kissed her. Sylvia was initially stunned, but she gradually began to respond. Inexperienced, both individuals found themselves immersed in the emerging pleasure, and the atmosphere between them grew increasingly heated. During their kiss, Luke tightly embraced the diva, and his mischievous hands started exploring the curves of her body. Despite Sylvia noticing his playful actions, she was too overwhelmed by the newfound sensations to address his somewhat naughty behavior. After a while, Sylvia managed to regain her composure and gently pulled away from Luke. Chapter 33, Luke's Problem. Do you always treat others like this? Sylvia blushed, arranging her somewhat messy clothes while glaring at Luke angrily. What do you mean? Luke looked at Sylvia with interest. It's just suddenly, meeting a girl for the first time and then kissing her or something like that. Obviously, Sylvia hasn't been able to recover from the enchanting atmosphere just now. Of course not, I've only done this to you. Luke looked proud. This was the first kiss of the world's #1 singer. It could be said to be a dream for many men in this world. Although she knew that Luke was just trying to coax her, Sylvia's heart still couldn't help but skip a beat. And besides, didn't you say it yourself? You're my fan. Facing Luke's words this time, Sylvia rolled her eyes at him. You can't do whatever you want to your fans. Thanks to you, I'm somewhat disillusioned with the term idol. Speaking up to this point, Sylvia furrowed her brow. She forcibly suppressed the turmoil in her heart, trying hard to present herself very seriously, and then spoke, solemnly saying to Luke, don't you truly realize that there's something off about yourself? Upon hearing Sylvia's questioning, Luke seemed a bit dazed. Is there something wrong with him? That's right, he is indeed acting strangely, and it has been going on for quite some time. In the most straightforward terms, his current condition is actually the onset of inner demons. Of course, it doesn't mean he has literal Shinsha-style inner demons, it's just a metaphor. The cause is actually because he has grown too quickly. In just 2 years, he has depleted the swordsmanship accumulated by the Fan Xinglu lineage for thousands of years. It's not just since he arrived in this world, he has already shown signs even before the start of the official mission. Rapid progress leading to a mismatch in mental/psychological state is a threshold that every genius has to go through, and Luke is certainly no exception. However, it's not that severe for him at the moment, and ultimately, this issue can be blamed on Claudia. If according to Luke's original plan, he would have secluded himself in Geelong's 7th Institute for a full 3 years, then directly participate in Lindworm Festa. As long as he could complete the main mission and return to the main god space, all his current issues would be easily resolved. Within the main god space, there are specialized facilities designed to address various problems that arise for agents due to overly rapid progress. However, Claudia's appearance disrupted the calm and tranquil state of mind that Luke had managed to barely maintain. Having no experience whatsoever in this area, not even having had a romantic relationship, Luke faces the enthusiastic reception from such a beautiful girl. To say that he didn't feel a bit lightheaded inside would obviously be impossible, but this lightheadedness is causing a problem. When your heart is aflutter, having a stern demeanor is like a lollipop without sweetness. The most noticeable manifestation is that Luke has lost a bit of composure and calmness, becoming somewhat proactive and aggressive. As time goes on, this situation is expected to become more and more serious. As a result, Luke starts to become a bit mischievous and develops some wicked tendencies. Whether it's secretly taking advantage of Julius, taking the opportunity to kiss Sylvia, or other actions, they are all to some extent influenced by the change in his mental state. There are also other behaviors, such as teasing Senior Brother Zhao, bullying Senior Brother Zhao, playing tricks on Senior Brother Zhao, joining forces with Cecily to tease Senior Brother Zhao, and so on, all of which are due to issues in his mental state. Yes, it's definitely not intentional on his part to make things difficult for Zhao Hufeng. Everything is the fault of the inner demons. The most serious issue lies not in these mental problems. After all, he hasn't reached the point of losing self-awareness. Currently, it's just that he has become a bit mischievous compared to before. For someone like Zhao Hufeng, who is like a friend or family to Luke, his changes actually add a bit of human touch, which might not be entirely a bad thing, probably. The biggest problem lies in the fact that his control over his own momentum and sword chi has gradually declined. Earlier, when he forcefully kissed Sylvia, it was due to the fluctuation in his mental state, causing a leakage of momentum. Sylvia, locked in by Luke's fierce momentum, couldn't break free, allowing Luke to act recklessly in the subsequent time. But it was precisely because of this that Sylvia was able to discover that something was wrong with Luke. Sylvia considers herself quite adept at reading people. Regardless of the industry, once someone becomes world-class, top-tier, or world #1, individuals of this caliber tend to have unique insights based on their experiences. If Luke were truly the kind of carefree and unrestrained wanderer at heart, someone with no regard for consequences, Sylvia wouldn't have bothered approaching him at all. What she's most concerned about now is not something else, it's the lindworm that Luke is about to participate in. The significant issue for Luke, aside from the potential trouble he might cause with girls, is the decreasing control over his own strength. What worries her the most is that he seems to have started to let loose, and participating in lindworm in this state. Aren't you afraid that you might accidentally kill someone during lindworm? Sylvia said to Luke with great seriousness. It must be said that this songstress girl is genuinely kind. Even though she was just taken advantage of by someone, upon realizing it was unintentional, she immediately thought of the other person. This unintentional display of kindness and gentleness quietly touched Luke's heartstrings. He erased the light smile that he had been wearing on his face recently, used as a disguise, and replaced it with a calm and composed expression. While he put away the light smile, Sylvia was surprised to find that the atmosphere around them changed along with Luke's transformation. Originally, there was a somewhat relaxed and ambiguous atmosphere between them, but now it was completely replaced by a calm and stable one, as if being in this space would not be shaken by anything. This is proof that Luke has now entered the realm of sword intent. Unfortunately, the hint of restlessness surrounding his brows fundamentally disrupted this calm. Although the impact can be seen as not too significant, it introduced a slight flaw into the originally flawless momentum and intent. It's like a speck of mouse droppings spoiling a pot of porridge. This tiny flaw is enough to become Luke's fatal weakness. You can rest assured. Facing opponents at the student level won't make me make mistakes. Even against that Sigurdrifa, it's not a problem. Luke said so, simultaneously giving Sylvia a meaningful glance. However, at this moment, while Sylvia is trying to suppress her disorderly thoughts and worries about Luke, she doesn't notice his subtle actions. What about facing Ophelia then? If it's against that Ereshkigal, in your current state, it's impossible to hold back. On her side, she's the type who can't hold back either. The final result might be a life and death struggle between you two, or even both of you suffering serious injuries. The girl's tone is filled with unease, and her concern for the safety of both of them is genuine. Chapter 34, Ereshkigal. Ereshkigal or Ophelia Landlöfen. Upon hearing Sylvia mention this, Luke fell silent for a moment. He understood better than anyone his current condition. Lindworm is scheduled for this winter, and it's just the beginning of summer now. So, the most likely scenario is that one of them ends up dead, and the other injured. Ophelia Landlöfen, the Ereshkigal, is now considered the strongest Striga in Asterisk City. In a way, she is somewhat similar to Luke, although the reasons for their conditions are different. Both of them find themselves in a state of inadequate control over their abilities. However, their situations, though similar, are entirely different. Luke's current condition is due to mental factors, leading to a temporary decrease in control, making it somewhat challenging to achieve precise control over his abilities. But in terms of usage, he can still manage it to a certain extent. Ophelia, on the other hand, is entirely different. She has no way of controlling her abilities, and she doesn't even have any intention of trying to control them. Ophelia's ability as a Striga is already reflected in her title, which is Poison/Miasma. Ophelia's ability is to manipulate miasma. She can condense poisonous smoke and miasma into entities, or she can make it colorless, odorless, and elusive. Just like Julius can add various attributes and concepts to flames, Ophelia can also add various characteristics to miasma. This ability to corrode and dissolve all things can be considered extremely evil. But the reason why she is known as the strongest Striga, even Sylvia cannot compare with her, is not because of this extremely evil ability. Speaking of the ability of miasma alone, there is no way to compare it with the omnipotence of Sigurdrifa, Sylvia. However, Ophelia has an unparalleled prana reserve that can be called endless. Contrary to her ability that could be considered extremely evil, Ophelia was once an extremely kind person, so kind that she couldn't bear to hurt even an insect. Because of an inhumane experiment, the girl who loved flowers, loved life, and was not even a gene-stellar disappeared. That experiment ultimately ended in failure, but what remained was a lone venom witch who is now feared by many. Orphelia has never developed her own abilities. Typically, Strigas, even exceptional ones like Sylvia, need to develop their abilities to become stronger among Striga. However, Orphelia has never done so. She has never had any intention of accepting this cruel power she possesses, from beginning to end. If she were an adult, or even a teenager, she might have taken a different path. However, at that time, Orphelia was only in the single digits in terms of age. How could you expect a child who loves life to accept a power that brings about the destruction of everything? In her heart, she had always hoped that someone could defeat her, someone could bring an end to her. Despite her love for life, she continuously extinguished lives, and the cruel reality had long made her give up hope for life. That's why she didn't want to become stronger, that's why she didn't develop her abilities. Even so, even if she stood still without resistance, no one could kill her, and to this day, there is no one who can cause her even the slightest harm. The reason lies in the seemingly endless supply of prana reserve. No one can, with such support of the boundless amount of prana, break through her self-defense. Over time, she gave up not only on life but also on death, simply drifting along with the flow, living like a walking dead. She had considered suicide, but she dared not. Perhaps, deep within her heart, a tiny thread of hope and the instinctual fear of death that humans possess still lingered. This is why it's said that she is similar to Luke but different. Luke cannot control his own power, while Orphelia, on the other hand, chooses not to control her own ability. However, Luke is quite confident in his own strength. Even if there are some minor issues at the moment, if he were to engage in a fight with Orphelia, he is certain that the one who would end up dead is not him. In his view, the likely outcome would be accidentally killing Orphelia, completing the main mission, and returning to the main god space to address his current issues. Because killing is not allowed at Festa, if a situation of murder arises, Luke would immediately be stripped of his qualification to participate. Although he had already entered the top 4 by that time, not being able to achieve the championship would lower the evaluation of the main mission. That is not what he hopes for. It would be best if he could find a solution to his problems before Blindworm, even if it's just on the surface or temporary. Upon reflecting on it, he suddenly realized that his abnormality has probably been discovered by others, at least by Zhao Hufeng and the others. They must have already noticed. The reason he was sent out to relax, with even Wu Xiaowei intervening and Zhao Hufeng bringing out his cherished ticket to Sylvia's concert, is because they sensed that Luke was not okay. Perhaps they observed it in their daily lives or noticed it during some sparring sessions. They may not know the specific reasons, but that doesn't stop them from caring about Luke. Cecily, Zhao Hufeng, Wu Xiaowei, and even Fan Xinglu are all expressing their concern in their own ways. Realizing this fact makes Luke very happy. He discovers that people are silently caring for him, which is a particularly heartwarming thing. However, in Fan Xinglu's case, there's probably a considerable element of amusement. After all, she is just that kind of person. Moreover, Luke is certain that Fan Xinglu definitely has a method to solve his current problems. An immortal who has lived for thousands of years cannot possibly be unable to solve such a small problem. Yet, she remains silent on the matter. Even if Luke were to make a serious mistake, killing someone at the Festa, given the influence of the Banyu Tenra, it wouldn't be too difficult for her to suppress the matter. But in case Luke finds a solution himself and improves his strength, she would be delighted. Anyway, as long as it doesn't develop to harm Luke, she'll be happy to watch and cheer from the sidelines. Luke, having understood these things, seems to have eased some of the tension on his brow. At least according to his inference, things shouldn't escalate to the extent that Sylvia is worried about. Chapter 35, State of Mind. I will resolve this issue before Blindworm, Luke replied to Sylvia. This was his original plan. The state of mind is quite mysterious. The more anxious you are to elevate it, the more it can influence you. Luke certainly won't make such a mistake, and the situation is not at a severe level. The state of mind naturally improves in subtle ways without conscious effort. If Luke still has no solution before Lindworm, he will seek help from Fan Xinglu. As long as Fan Xinglu is willing to assist, at least a temporary relief of the problem is quite simple. So when Luke says he will resolve it, it's not just empty words, he has his own basis for saying so. But Sylvia is not aware of these details. In her eyes, Luke is currently acting very strangely. Through the intimate contact just now, Sylvia sensed the aura Luke exuded and realized that he is much stronger than her. Similar to the Ereshkigal, he is a monster standing at the pinnacle of the city. Sylvia is confident that, in her understanding, there is nothing that can affect the manifestation of her power. Maybe there are some very strange powers that can nullify her ability as a Striga or interfere with the flow of prana in her body. However, these are external influences that won't shake her fundamental control over her power. Even she, being significantly weaker than Luke, isn't easily affected at the core level. Sylvia couldn't imagine what kind of situation would be able to fundamentally shake the power of a monster-level existence. Although she couldn't imagine it, she could still clearly distinguish the seriousness of the matter. It is obviously not a trivial matter for a person's source of power to be shaken, especially if it happens to a strong person. Although Luke assured her that he could handle this matter on his own, Sylvia couldn't help but feel worried for him. Especially considering the recent intimate contact, where Luke's issues seem to affect his behavior. The thought of losing oneself is frightening, and now that this alarming situation is happening before her eyes, Sylvia cannot simply stand by and do nothing. In Asterisk City, Luke has achieved significant success, possessing formidable strength and a bright future. Despite his young age, he has become one of the central figures in the city. It's evident that, barring any unforeseen circumstances, Luke is destined to become a leading figure in the city in the coming years. Sylvia cannot bear to watch a promising student gradually succumb to darkness and destruction due to unknown issues. Her kindness and gentleness won't allow her to stand idly by and let this happen. If Luke knew what Sylvia was thinking right now, he would probably laugh out loud based on his recent somewhat unscrupulous character. It can only be said that even the world-class singer is in the age of daydreams, and her imagination is exceptionally vivid. In fact, Sylvia can't be blamed for this matter. The biggest problem is the gap in cognition. People are always like this, and they will overestimate unknown things as much as possible. Looking at this matter from Sylvia's point of view, she concludes that there is a force or something capable of silently eroding the strength of even the city's top-tier elite without being detected. After being influenced, even strong individuals like Luke find themselves unable to resist, leading to a fundamental decline in their control over their own strength. Does this mean that if it develops for a while, the number one student in Geelong 7th might experience a violent outburst? Moreover, it seems the other party's personality and behavior have been influenced, and if even Luke can't resist, it's even less likely for others. So, could this phenomenon occur in others? Or, perhaps, could it also happen to her? Facing something completely unknown, discovering that the other person possesses an overwhelming power that you cannot resist, in such a situation, Sylvia chose not to avoid it. She genuinely felt worried for Luke from the bottom of her heart and made a determined decision to help him. This kind of gentleness and thoughtfulness is indeed a rare and precious treasure. However, compared to Sylvia's ignorance, Luke is the informed party. He is well aware that the issue he is currently facing is not due to any external force influencing him, nor is it because something has shaken him. The reason for the decrease in his control over his own power is simply that a crucial part of the core of his power, which makes up his very essence, is malfunctioning. When the core is disrupted, it naturally affects his overall power. As for the change in personality, it might sound frightening, but it's not as dreadful as it seems. Indeed, from an external perspective, some of Luke's current actions might not align with his usual style, but these actions do not imply that they are not his own choices. Ultimately, the impact on his mental state is not yet severe. If Luke consciously suppresses it, the current subtle fluctuations cannot have any significant effect on his judgment. He acted according to the influence, which was also a choice he made after careful consideration because forcibly suppressing his emotion would not be beneficial to a breakthrough in his state of mind. Rather than blocking, he opts for a more lenient approach. As long as this method doesn't lead to severe consequences, Luke won't forcibly suppress his emotions. After all, he has been practicing under the influence of Fan Xinglu for over 2 years. In such an extended period, it's impossible not to be influenced by Fan Xinglu's unruly personality. One could say that the first thing to manifest under the influence of his mental state is this uninhibited behavior, and Fan Xinglu deserves credit for it. However, Luke was not completely clueless about the solution. First of all, it can definitely be solved by returning to the main god space. Secondly, it is basically certain that Fan Xinglu has more than one solution in her hands. This assures Luke that he won't face the worst outcome, and that's why he isn't overly concerned about the situation. Nevertheless, Sylvia's concern deeply touches him. In this brief conversation, the girl in front of him countless times stirs Luke's mind with her tenderness and kindness. Chapter 36. So, misunderstanding is the root of all evil. However, compared to Luke's touched emotions, Sylvia doesn't have such a good mood at the moment. As the saying goes, holding back anger makes it grow, and stepping back only makes one feel more aggrieved. Initially, Sylvia's attention was mainly taken away by Luke's strange behavior. Now that she has come to her senses, Sylvia feels more and more wronged. But to be honest, Sylvia herself has experienced unfortunate events, so she holds a bit of sympathy for Luke, who is going through similar hardships. This subconscious sympathy makes her want to help him, but after calming down, she also feels angry and embarrassed. Sylvia, who has never experienced such a situation before, is at a loss for how to react. Sigh. Sylvia, freed from Luke's grasp, drew in a deep breath. It had been an unpredictable day, filled with a multitude of experiences that left Sylvia feeling overwhelmed. She hadn't expected that a kiss would consume so much energy. At this moment, Sylvia has no idea what she should say. Her emotions are quite complicated. Luke, recognizing the likely turmoil in Sylvia's mind, doesn't wait for her to express herself. Understanding the need to proactively divert her attention from the recent incident, he takes the lead in steering the conversation elsewhere. He looks at Sylvia's eyes, resembling purple gemstones, observing the extremely complex emotions reflected in them. Let's go, we still have shopping to do. Luke decided against provoking her any further. Pushing her might trigger an undesirable reaction, possibly leading to an outburst. Even kindness has its boundaries. Yeah. Sylvia, obediently allowing Luke to lead her, left the alley. Now, she has also realized that the root cause of this matter seems to be on her own side. After all, it was Sylvia who initiated the confession to Luke in the beginning, even if it was just an act. Although she expressed her concern to Luke in the role of a fan, whether this could be considered a confession was something Sylvia didn't know, as she had never had such an experience before. Come to think of it, is she still acting now? Right. She is still acting. Sylvia, who was obediently following Luke, suddenly seemed to have an epiphany. Luke probably doesn't know my identity yet, Sylvia finally remembered. She is currently hiding her identity from Luke. In other words, does Luke really see her as his fan? And then, is he making advances because she'd confessed to him? Sylvia slowly calmed down, and her thinking became active. She carefully reviewed her actions from before. Upon careful consideration, she initiated the approach, and the intimate contact between them was a result of her confession. She even concealed her identity from Luke, thus uncovering his secrets and vulnerabilities. The more Sylvia thought about this, the more a sense of guilt emerged within her. According to her perspective, what she had just done seemed shameless, an unscrupulous individual using physical allure and deceit to exploit others and gain their weaknesses. Furthermore, after obtaining someone else's secrets and vulnerabilities, she would shift all the blame onto them, accusing them of taking advantage and labeling them as shameless scoundrels. The more Sylvia thought about it, the sadder and more wronged she felt. The reality was that, despite her initial belief, it was her who had initiated contact with Luke, not the other way around. But according to the current situation, it was actually Luke who she took the initiative to contact, rather than Luke deliberately approaching her. She has no reason to blame Luke for taking advantage of her. A wave of indescribable sadness surged within her. Sylvia, who had been silently led by Luke, walking quietly behind him, suddenly found her eyes welling up with redness. Perhaps Sylvia had experienced too many unfamiliar emotional impacts within a short period. The sudden onslaught of sadness and grievance from her heart seemed to overwhelm her. Large teardrops began to fall incessantly, making a pattering sound. She didn't want to be misunderstood as someone who had initiated contact. She didn't want to be seen as the bad person, even though she was the one who felt wronged. Sob, 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 sob. Sylvia's sobbing instantly caught Luke's attention. Initially, he was thinking about how to resolve the awkwardness between them while holding Sylvia's hand. But before he could think of a solution, he realized that something seemed to be wrong with the girl behind him. As he turned around to look, the expression of the girl, teary-eyed and utterly heartbroken, startled him. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Did he just make the girl cry? Now it was Luke's turn to be confused. Hadn't she just calmed down a moment ago? Why was she suddenly crying? Suddenly, the once confident and composed Luke began to fumble around. While he had some knowledge about how to comfort girls due to his recent interactions with many of them, none of those girls had cried in front of him. He had no experience in dealing with a crying girl. Once the accumulated emotions burst out, it wasn't easy to contain them. Sylvia couldn't hold back her tears, and the more she cried, the sadder she became. Especially when she saw Luke awkwardly trying to comfort her. She didn't know why, but seeing him there, clumsy and doing his best to console her, made her even sadder. The more she cried, the more aggrieved she felt, and the more aggrieved she felt, the more she wanted to cry. As a result, her crying became louder, attracting the attention of passers-by. Chapter 37, Crying Girl. Sylvia's cries gradually attracted the attention of passers-by around her. A delicate and beautiful young girl, sobbing on the street, with a boy standing beside her, trying to console her. It was a scene that naturally drew curiosity and interest. Most people couldn't resist the allure of a story or some drama. As a result, the surrounding pedestrians slowly gathered, forming a circle around Luke and Sylvia. Immersed in her sadness, Sylvia paid no attention to her surroundings. Unbeknownst to her, she had unwittingly become the center of attention as the distressed girl among the onlookers. Since it was a girl in tears, regardless of the reason, in the eyes of the bystanders, if a girl was upset, it must be the fault of the guy involved. Following this mentality, voices of condemnation toward Luke gradually started to emerge from the crowd. Realizing that it wasn't the right environment to continue consoling Sylvia, Luke, noticing the growing disapproval around him, promptly made the decision to leave the scene. Even though he didn't know why Sylvia suddenly started crying, it was apparent that this was not the right place to address the issue. If they lingered any longer, more people might join the crowd, making it difficult for them to leave. Moreover, if someone recognized either him or Sylvia, the situation could escalate quickly for both of them. In the event of such a recognition, the news would likely spread rapidly within the city. Luke, having experienced such situations before, could already imagine the headlines on various websites. Shocking. World's #1 idol spotted on a date with a stranger. Unbelievable. Diva princess has a boyfriend. World's top songstress openly weeping on the street. What could be the reason? Revealed. Sigurdrifa allegedly involved with the rumored boyfriend of the Seducan Student Council president. Extreme swordsman exposed. Publicly bullying a girl on the streets. Top secret. Love and hate among the 3 top rankers in the name charts. Just the thought of it overwhelmed Luke. He quickly approached Sylvia, scooped her up, and swiftly moved away from the encroaching crowd. Sylvia is very light, and her height is not too tall. After being lifted by Luke, she curls up in his arms like a little cat. Perhaps due to the significant pressure of being a songstress and having no place to release it in her daily life. It could also be because she has been putting on a brave face, unable to find her teacher for a long time. Alternatively, within this short half-day period, she has experienced too many emotional impacts, making it difficult for her to let go. Maybe it's a combination of these reasons. Sylvia seems as if she wants to release all the grievances accumulated over the years in one breath. Even in Luke's embrace, there is no sign of her crying easing up. Sylvia lowered her head in embarrassment, silently poking the ice cream in front of her with a spoon. Stare. Luke silently stared at Sylvia. A noticeable blush appeared on Sylvia's face. She lowered her head even more, and her hand unconsciously stopped its movement with the spoon. Stare. Luke continued to silently gaze at Sylvia. Sylvia dared not lift her head to look at Luke. She could only lower her head again, and her small hand, which was originally placed on the table, slowly moved under the table, gripping her own clothes. Stare. Luke kept staring at Sylvia without saying a word. The blush on Sylvia's face had climbed to the back of her ears. She continued to shrink under the table, as if trying to hide her whole self from Luke's icy gaze. Stare. Sigh. Seeing Sylvia almost buried under the table, Luke could only break the awkward atmosphere by speaking first. He felt that if he continued staring like this, Sylvia might really dig a hole and bury herself right there. The moment Luke made a sound, Sylvia suddenly became alert, freezing in her chair. She tried hard to put on a look of "I'm very well behaved." Seeing her reaction, Luke couldn't help but sigh again. At the moment, the two of them were resting in an ice cream shop, but before that, Luke had to put in a lot of effort to shake off the onlookers. All of this was thanks to the girl in front of him. Throughout the journey, Sylvia's crying not only did not diminish but became louder and more heartbreaking. In his arms, the girl cried so sorrowfully and heartbreakingly. On this journey, Luke was not only mistaken for an unfaithful man by passers-by multiple times but also, on a few occasions, was even considered a human trafficker kidnapping a girl. Running around, avoiding and interacting with passers-by, Luke was exhausted both physically and mentally. After Sylvia cried her heart out, the girl just lay in his arms, playing dead. She made no effort to clear the misunderstanding or explain to the surrounding crowd. This further solidified the kidnapping a girl narrative. I mean, look at the girl, she's not even planning to help explain after crying, indicating that there was no misunderstanding in the first place. So, after Sylvia stopped crying, the number of people following Luke didn't decrease, it even gradually increased. In the end, Luke was forced to use his God/divine speed to shake them off. At this point, Luke didn't care about the issue of whether using his signature skill would expose his identity. If he couldn't escape, he would surely be caught by the righteous public and handed over to the police. Sylvia also knew what she had done, but she had no choice. At that time, how could she explain everything? Crying loudly on the street without any dignity was already embarrassing enough for her. Moreover, afterward, she continued crying in Luke's arms. After she cried enough and realized what had happened, she felt utterly embarrassed. Her heart was practically exploding at that moment. How could you expect her to explain to the people around? In such a situation, asking her to speak up was like asking her to drop dead on the spot. So, she chose to bury her head in Luke's arms, playing dead. Following the spirit of better to die together than die alone, she perfectly shifted the blame onto Luke. Even when they entered this ice cream shop, it was Luke carrying her. Didn't she see the people around looking at them with weird eyes? Now, to be honest, Sylvia had no idea how to wrap things up. The only thing she was clear about was that she absolutely couldn't expose her identity to Luke. Otherwise, her lifelong reputation as the world's #1 idol would be completely ruined. Chapter 38, Luke's Collections. So, really, what caused you to cry like that? Luke looked at Sylvia, feeling a headache coming on. And nothing, Sylvia murmured quietly. Alright, what's your plan now? Keep shopping, or are you ready to go back? Luke was uncertain about what to do next, and it wasn't just Sylvia who was in that predicament. According to their original plan, at this moment, they should be shopping and casually probing each other for information. However, the current situation for both of them is not ideal. Luke's shirt got damp from Sylvia's tears earlier, and after drying, it appeared a bit wrinkled, making it uncomfortable to wear. Sylvia was in relatively better condition. Perhaps because she buried her head in Luke's embrace, tears and all ended up on him, so her clothes were just a bit disheveled. However, after crying for such a long time, Sylvia had also expended a significant amount of energy, and she was no longer in the mood to continue shopping. Moreover, she had a concert in the afternoon. If she didn't find an opportunity to rest, it would undoubtedly affect her performance on stage later. However, if she were to suggest leaving now, how would they account for what happened just a while ago? Did she engage in a conversation with Luke just to cry on him like this? Now that the matter is done, just pat your butt and leave. It feels like she is increasingly fitting the role of a bad girl. I don't know. In the end, Sylvia couldn't bring herself to directly say that she wanted to leave. Fortunately, Luke noticed her current state and inner turmoil. He also knew that the other party had an important concert in the afternoon. Luke tapped the glass in his hand, gesturing to Sylvia, and then said, "Finish your ice cream. It's going to melt if you don't eat it soon. After finishing the ice cream, take a short break, and let's call it a day." Although Sylvia was unaware that Luke had already figured out her attempt to conceal her identity, it was evident that Luke now understood her desire to leave. In order not to embarrass Sylvia further, he took the initiative to suggest ending this date. This prompted a hint of gratitude in Sylvia's heart, but more than that, there was a sense of guilt. She indeed needed a break, and right now, she didn't know how to face Luke. If this date could come to an end, it would be perfect for Sylvia. However, this would only make her seductress image, which she had imagined in her mind, even more fitting. It went beyond her previous imagination, adding a layer, using the other person, Luke, to vent her emotions and stress, regardless of whether it would cause trouble for him. Yet, rationality told her that accepting Luke's proposal and parting ways quietly was the best choice for both of them at the moment. In the silent atmosphere, Sylvia quietly finished her ice cream, and the energy consumed during the series of dramas was slightly replenished. As per their agreement, now that the ice cream was finished, their activities for the day should come to an end. However, both of them remained seated because they were unsure how to say goodbye in the current awkward atmosphere. After a moment of silence, Luke stood up first. Without saying anything, he just waved to Sylvia and walked towards the exit. Wait! Luke hadn't taken a few steps when Sylvia called him from behind. There will be a diva concert this afternoon. Will you be attending? Luke still didn't speak, just nodded slightly, and then continued to leave the ice cream shop without stopping. Once outside the shop, Luke couldn't help but sigh again. He felt like the number of times he sighed in half a day was almost catching up to his usual yearly total. Shaking his head to clear unnecessary thoughts, the immediate priority was to find a place to change his clothes. After all, he has to stay outside for most of the day, so he can't just wear these clothes soaked in tears. After that, Luke casually found a store and bought a set of ordinary casual clothes to change into. As for the original, songstress tear-soaked limited edition outfit he was wearing, along with the secretly recorded video of the top diva wailing in broad daylight, Luke carefully stored them in his portable pocket. Although the internal space of the portable pocket is not large, it has the function of freely dividing areas/partitions. Among the partitions, one was specifically designated for storing these extremely precious items. Most of them are backups of photos and videos, as well as a small number of unique items. These are all rare treasures that Luke has collected with great effort over the past 2 years, and behind each one of them there is a moving or tear-inducing story. For example, inside, there are items like these. Photo of Julius in ragged clothes at the mercy of others. Photos and videos of Fan Xinglu's adorable sleeping posture. Compilation video of Claudia acting cute. Photo of senior brother falling flat on the ground. Video revealing the shocking truth inside senior sister Cecily's room. Video recording the incidents of bullying senior brother Zhao. Photos and videos documenting senior brother Zhao cross-dressing. Video compilation of senior brother Zhao's embarrassing moments. There are also 3 sets of female clothing labeled as worn by senior brother Zhao, stored in this area. Next to these 3 sets of women's clothing is another set labeled as Taboo Ace in the Hole, featuring a cute style of children's clothing. These items represent just a portion of Luke's collection. Essentially, for anyone he has a good relationship with, he holds at least 3 or more corresponding treasures. Even our Pendragon doesn't escape this trend. However, if we talk about the largest quantity, it's undoubtedly our dear senior brother Zhao. Now, among these collections, there are new additions, the Songstress Tear-Soaked Limited Edition, clothing and the video of the top diva wailing in broad daylight. These two are the latest items. The increase in the collection brightened his mood. Checking the time after this series of twists and turns, it's almost lunchtime. The morning's activities not only exhausted Sylvia but also significantly drained Luke's energy, especially during the chase with the righteous people. After organizing himself, Luke sets off to find a place to eat. For someone like him, who doesn't often come to the city, finding a preferred restaurant is indeed a considerable challenge. Chapter 39, Zhao Hufeng's Black History. Having finished his meal, Luke walked out of the hamburger shop. Luke could now be considered someone who practices martial arts, and practitioners of martial arts typically have strict requirements for their meals. Foods like hamburgers and fast food are generally avoided by them. Luke, having started on the martial path relatively late, doesn't have the habits cultivated from childhood like other martial artists. However, due to the influence of Zhao Hufeng and others over the past 2 years, he has refrained from eating this kind of so-called junk food for a long time. At Jilong's 7th Institute, the control over the food in all student cafeterias is very strict, ensuring that the meals are delicious, healthy, and nutritious. If you are a direct disciple of the Banyu Tenra, you even have the right to enjoy a special cafeteria exclusively open to direct disciples. In that cafeteria, each meal for direct disciples is prepared individually, adjusting according to the disciple's taste, physique, and other needs. Not to mention the core disciples like Luke, the quality of every meal is beyond the imagination of outsiders. Therefore, there is a reason why junk food is not popular in Jilong 7th. However, for Luke, the main reason for giving up junk food is not really because of health concerns. The primary reason is that if you are caught eating junk food within Jilong 7th and our lovely senior brother Zhao finds out, it's over. Dear senior brother Zhao will incessantly advise and lecture you day and night, constantly emphasizing the importance of food for practitioners of martial arts and the dangers of consuming junk food. Don't be fooled, despite Zhao Hufeng seeming easy to deceive, he is, in fact, quite easy to deceive. What Luke meant was that Zhao Hufeng is indeed quite firm and even stubborn about certain things. One of those things is practice. Anything harmful to practice/training, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, he will strongly oppose. That's why Luke genuinely respects this senior brother from the bottom of his heart. Being a core disciple brought along by the Banyu Tenra is not something that can be achieved solely based on talent. Don't think that Fan Xinglu doesn't care about the character of her disciples. Those who are truly incorrigible fools will never pass her disciple test. Even if you have talent, how can you become a strong person if your character is flawed? Fundamentally, such individuals cannot meet Fan Xinglu's standards. Fan Xinglu is not looking for the present, she is seeking the future, the possibilities. The core disciples she brings along, no matter how faint, possess a glimmer of potential. This bit of potential is the qualification for touching the miracle in the future. Those without even a glimmer of potential have no qualification to receive Fan Xinglu's attention. Among the current core disciples of the 3rd generation of the Banyu Tenra, Zhao Hufeng is the one who best embodies the image of a cultivator. Even in comparison to senior brother Wu Xiaowei, who holds a higher seniority, Zhao Hufeng surpasses him in this aspect. In most situations, Zhao Hufeng can be considered the embodiment of the term warrior/cultivator. His every word and action seem to perfectly interpret the behavior expected of a warrior/cultivator. As for why it is said, in most situations, that's a question for Luke and Cecily. The two of them, out of their respect and love for Zhao Hufeng, cannot bear to see him being so strict on himself. Therefore, they often come up with peculiar methods to help Zhao Hufeng relieve stress. For instance, there was a time when Cecily and Luke collaborated to set a trap for Zhao Hufeng, successfully indebting him to the two of them with a not insignificant favor. Then, they utilized this favor to make Zhao Hufeng promise to do something for them within his capabilities. So, they requested Zhao Hufeng to advise their master, Fan Xinglu, to include hamburgers in the student cafeteria's menu. Of course, Zhao Hufeng would not agree to such a request. Being someone who strictly adheres to dietary habits, how could he allow junk food to appear in the student cafeteria? But he did promise Luke and Cecily to do something according to their request, and now Zhao Hufeng is caught in a dilemma. Fortunately, Luke and Cecily are not devils. They understand that Zhao Hufeng cannot agree to requests that violate his principles. So, after Zhao Hufeng struggled for a whole week and finally made up his mind to reject their request, they presented him with a second option. That option was cross-dressing. This choice was like a devil's whisper to Zhao Hufeng. Because he wouldn't have to break his promise or compromise his principles, he would only need to change into different clothes. However, if he really did that, it felt like he would lose something crucial as a man. At this point, Zhao Hufeng has been agonizing over this matter for a whole week. On one side is his commitment, and on the other is his bottom line. He is unwilling to give up either of them. So, the ultimate result is one of the 3 sets in Luke's collection. There are many similar situations because, after all, with one thing, there's usually a second, and with 2, there's a third. 3 represents variability, symbolizing endless possibilities in ancient times. As far as Luke knows, aside from the 3 sets of Zhao Hufeng's Black History, he has, Cecily and Fan Xinglu should also have collections with different quantities. Among the 3 of them, Cecily currently holds the most in terms of quantity. Originally, Luke had the most sets. However, there was a time when Cecily found him and exchanged some of her Black History, resulting in her having the most sets. There's another point unknown to Fan Xinglu, Cecily, and even Zhao Hufeng himself. Luke has a habit of secretly recording each Black History event, which allowed him to discover this. Based on the recorded videos and the information he gathered about Fan Xinglu and Cecily's inventories, Luke compared the data. He found that, among all of Zhao Hufeng's Black History, 1 set's whereabouts are unknown. Where could this missing Black History be? According to Luke's speculation, it's highly likely that it's in the hands of an unnamed senior brother. Although he currently lacks concrete evidence, he believes the situation is almost certain. With proper execution, he might be able to add another item to his collection. Chapter 40, Sylvia's Concert. Wow, there are indeed a lot of people. Although mentally prepared, Luke was still startled by the overwhelming crowd in front of him. Having finished lunch not long ago, Luke arrived at the venue for Sylvia's concert as there wasn't much else to do. He thought he had come early enough, but judging by the situation, it seems he might be considered late. Perhaps because the crowd outside the venue kept growing, the organizers, after confirming the concert preparations were complete, opened the venue for early entry. The Sirius Dome, the largest and proudest stage in Asterisk City, serves as the venue for Sylvia's concert this time. Its interior can accommodate up to 100,000 people. Under normal circumstances, the Sirius Dome, while open for tourists to visit and take pictures, is not typically used as a venue. It usually serves as the core location for the most significant event in Asterisk City, the Festa. Even in the Festa, not all matches qualify to take place in the Sirius Dome. In each edition of the Festa, matches only stabilize in the Sirius Dome when reaching the top 32. Before this stage, only matches involving highly anticipated contestants are held here. The Asterisk City boasts a total of 11 main stages/domes, including the Sirius Dome. Besides the massive stage, Sirius Dome, there are 3 large domes and 7 medium-sized domes. Additionally, there are countless small-scale outdoor stages scattered across every corner of the Asterisk City, making them a distinctive feature of the city. The reason for having so many stages is due to a clear regulation in Asterisk City. Even duels within the city limits must adhere to etiquette and take place on a designated stage. However, this regulation is rarely remembered or adhered to. Every event held in the Sirius Dome can be considered the most important activity in the entire city. If it were someone else, just the fact of using the Sirius Dome would be enough to boast about for a lifetime. But Sylvia is different. For her, using the Sirius Dome as the venue for a concert has become commonplace. In Asterisk City, there is no other place large enough to accommodate the fans coming to watch the concert, except for here. Luke followed the crowd and entered the Sirius Dome. He found his seat according to the number displayed on the ticket. Zhao Hufeng is truly a devoted fan of Sylvia. The ticket he obtained has an excellent position, not only being quite close to the stage but also offering a broad view, allowing a clear view of everything happening on the stage. Because he entered early, there was still a long time before the concert started, and many people just came in to check their seats and then left to do other things. Luke didn't have much to do today, so he decided to sit in his seat and play on his school badge/phone. Perhaps because the upcoming performance was by Sylvia, he instinctively started searching for information about her. Honestly, he had never heard Sylvia's songs before. He only knew that she was the world's #1 singer and that her singing was beautiful. So, Luke was quite looking forward to the upcoming concert. While playing on his school badge/phone, time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, the concert was about to begin. The entire Sirius Dome was filled to its max capacity, and everyone was eagerly anticipating the entrance of the world's most famous idol. Without keeping the audience waiting too long, accompanied by music, Sylvia slowly appeared at the center of the stage. The thunderous cheers erupted, and the excitement from the audience seemed as if it could overturn the entire venue. At this moment, Sylvia was entirely different from the one Luke had seen in the morning. She was radiant and captivating, drawing all eyes on her. As Sylvia stood on the stage singing, she became the center of the world. In the moment when the diva sang, the entire world seemed to revolve around her. Luke immersed himself in her singing. The exquisite voice seemed to cleanse his soul. The restlessness and turmoil in his heart calmed down for a moment. As Luke listened with closed eyes, he didn't notice that Sylvia's gaze had been fixed on him all along. When she realized that Luke was absorbed in her singing, a subtle smile unconsciously appeared on her face. Perhaps because she had cried fiercely in Luke's embrace that morning, Sylvia now felt her state was exceptionally perfect. It was as if the accumulated pressure from years had vanished in an instant, leaving her with an extraordinary sense of relaxation. As a result, the performance turned out to be exceptionally outstanding, beyond imagination. The song ends, and the crowd disperses. The beautiful moments are always fleeting, and Luke, completely immersed in the music, hasn't felt the passage of time at all. The concert has ended. Now on his way back to Geelong 7th Institute after leaving the Sirius Dome, Luke is pleasantly surprised by the concert, not only because he has developed a liking for Sylvia's singing but also because he realizes that, after listening to Sylvia's songs, his somewhat restless mind has gradually returned to a state of calm. Taking a moment to reflect on this newfound tranquility, he understands that it's only temporary. Once the effects of Sylvia's singing wear off, he'll likely return to his previous state. However, even if it's temporary, even if it's just a surface change, the fact that his mood can return to calmness momentarily surprises Luke and is enough to bring him joy. At least Luke no longer needs to worry about the upcoming Lindworm Festa. With Sylvia's help, on Lindworm Festa, even if he faces the Ereshkigal, he will not completely lose control of his strength, which will lead to tragedy. Luke also has Sylvia's contact information, exchanged during their casual conversation on the street earlier in the day before any embarrassing moments occurred between them. Although on the surface, it's listed as Sylvie's contact information, and she's making an effort to conceal her identity. However, Luke knows that it is Sylvia Leinheim herself. As for how to make Sylvia willingly assist him, that might pose some difficulties. After all, given the events that unfolded between them today and Luke taking advantage of the girl without any reservation, it could be challenging to win her favor. However, during their farewell at the ice cream shop, it seems like she didn't dislike him to an extreme extent, indicating that there might be a chance for a turnaround. Later, Luke also thought about the 2 new items added to his collection today and felt that things were looking up.